I've already summoned meteor.
Okay, let's go.
Ace.
Master, I've never heard you so excited.
Neo Muhammad!
Enough minutes? Or Tekken?
Yeah, man, let's get it home. Let's do it.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to L2R2 PlayStation Podcast. My name is Fonzie, and I'm joined by my co-host, Indie Game Dev, and my UK bro for another mum, Callum Monroe. Callum, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. I think just as soon as you started sort of introducing it, my internet seemed to have done something because you now look very crisp in HD. So that was good.
There we
timing.
go. Yeah, I have tinfoil lining my pants, so I think that's what's helping.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I was going to ask, but I didn't want to get too intimate.
No, that's why I keep the camera up here. I'm just all at tinfoil. It doesn't cover everything, so that's why it's
Yeah.
just showing up here.
Yeah.
But how you been, man?
Yeah, not bad. Just same old, really. Just been working and getting cold because it's now October. And yeah, just same old, really. Just plodding on.
Yeah, you mentioned it's October. It's October now. Yeah, like we're a little over a month away from PS5. That's what, November 10th, 11th, something around there. It's like mid-November. It's so crazy to be this close, and we've just been talking about this for a while now, and it's finally happening. Almost.
Yeah, very exciting. We get it a week later over here, which is
Right.
sad. But the looks of things, I won't even be getting one anyway because I can't find any. But no, yeah, very exciting. It's crazy how close it is. I think especially for people who have got them sort of confirmed for the day. It's pretty mad that something that big has only been available to pre-order a couple of months before its release. But I quite like it. It's exciting. We don't have to wait too long, and there was a huge amount of hype sort of because of it. So very exciting. And yeah, I'll just have to hire someone to steal yours and bring it over to me. So get it a week early that way as well.
You know what? I looked into this. So when I'd asked you about your address a couple weeks ago, part of that was also I had two pre-orders for the PS4. They were like still locked in. One of them was through Target originally in the States, and then directly through PlayStation. Since I had the two, I was like, maybe I can like ship it to Callum. He can just like, I don't know, PayPal me the cash or whatever.
Yeah.
I looked into shipping, and it was maybe 90% of the cost of the PS4 or PS5 just to ship it to you. So it's like there's no way I could actually get it done. But unless
I appreciate the thought though. But yeah, I'd have to have that weird American plug with the two. Is it
That's
two
true.
prongs or three prongs or sometimes
it's two prongs? Yep.
Yeah, I'm not about that. I prefer the big English plugs that don't look like they're going to fall out the wall all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting that we have different electricity standards for plugins. It seems like it should be the same, but like universally. But I'm not sure why they went with that. But it'd be a whole process to completely rebuild the infrastructure when it already works. So it's like why throw out the window?
Yeah. Well, I always sort of whenever I come over to America, or I think Europe have the same electrical sort of outlet as well. And you always have to get like that travel adapter or whatever. And they always sort of you'll put them in, but they're too heavy for the wall, so they'll sort of like tilt out. Or like they'll sort of have like a lock on it that you got to slide across to like make sure it stays in the wall. And that's just too many things for me to have to worry about.
Right. Nice. You been playing anything this week?
Yeah, so a couple of weird ones actually. I've actually just started playing Skyrim, which is a game I don't really like, but I've been thinking about giving it another go.
Okay.
And seeing what happens. And yeah, I've played about maybe an hour or so, and I am liking it a lot more. I'm trying to like really get invested in the lore because I love Oblivion and Morrowind, so I'm really trying to like read all the books I pick up, really listen to everything, explore, and just really take my time with it. And it looks really, really nice. I'm playing on my PC on Ultra at 1440p, and it
Nice.
actually looks a lot better than I thought it would. And that's with no mods or anything. So yeah, so I've been played a little bit of that, and I've also been playing Ease or Wise or however you pronounce it. That JRPG I was playing last week.
Okay, nice.
I bought the original first two games, which have been like sort of touched up and things, and you can get them on your phone. So I've just been playing through that today, and it's really good fun. They're only about 6 hours long or so, so you can just sort of blast through them, which is quite refreshing for a JRPG. Um, so yeah, I've just been playing through that as well. But other than that, I've been wanting to play some more Last of Us 2, but I think I said last week I'm at the hospital, so I've been waiting for a time where I feel brave enough to tackle that.
Yeah, we'll give you the Skyrim bug to go back in. Did you originally play it when it came out, or is this kind of your first time jumping in?
Yeah, so I was a massive fan of Oblivion on 360. I think I played it on, and I mean I played that for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And so when Skyrim came out, I was very excited. I got it on my PS3, and I just felt like in pretty much every way except visually, it was just like a complete step backwards. I thought Oblivion was far deeper, had much more things going on, felt a lot more alive. I just thought it was so much more interesting, and it was a lot more difficult as well, but in like a
Mm.
really engaging RPG sort of way. Whereas Skyrim, I thought was just really like toned down, really streamlined, but not in a good way. And yeah, so I nearly finished it when I first played it, and I got it again on PC a few years ago, and I just modded like the crap out of it, and made it even more unenjoyable. So I've now sort of had a few years to like stew on it, and yeah, I thought I'm interested in sort of playing it, and especially with all the stuff going on with Bethesda at the moment, it just sort of put it back in my mind. And yeah, to be honest, I am enjoying it a lot more. I'm playing it on like a hard difficulty to try and recreate that Oblivion kind of feel.
Mm.
And yeah, like I said, just the fact it looks like it does. I didn't think it would look as good as it does on PC all scaled up, but it looks really nice, runs really well. So yeah, so feeling optimistic about it. But like I said, I'm only like an hour in, so that could all change.
Yeah, you mentioned Oblivion, and that reminds me, I just listened to this interview. It was Major Nelson from Xbox. He talked to the heads at Bethesda, and I want to say
Mm.
Todd Howard, possibly the main guy over there at Bethesda. They're talking about developing,
Yeah,
putting Oblivion on the original Xbox 360, and they had to do a bunch of weird things like reload the game in the background. So initially, when you load the game through your Xbox, it's giving you this long load time. But no, the original Xbox, yeah, not the 360. It's actually resetting the game, rebooting the game while it's showing you the loading screen. And I guess you can do that without telling the user that you're rebooting the entire console. So they're rebooting the
yeah,
console just to like free up memory, but they're just showing you the
yeah,
loading screen. But they had to do a bunch of tricks like that to get it to
yeah,
run at the level that it needed to. But it was just super
yeah,
interesting that they're doing all these crazy tricks to get it to work. But yeah,
yeah,
in light of that whole news that they acquired them, they actually have been doing a lot of interviews together, trying to be somewhat honest, but as much as they can with the
yeah,
whole PR stuff. But yeah, and one of them was just
yeah,
talking about their history with Xbox.
yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. I remember. I think it was my brothers who got Xbox 360. This is when it sort of was first. Well, when it first came out, like Gears One and all that. And I think Oblivion was sort of one of the launch games for 360 or something. And I remember sort of the first time playing it, I was like, "What on earth is this game? Like, it's so weird. Like, I just didn't really compute with me that kind of game." And yeah, and then I ended up just falling in love with it. I mean, it's just so feels so real, even though it is really stupid and bizarre and buggy. um
Right.
you really do feel like you're progressing and getting stronger, and the characters are all really funny and quirky, and it's just such a great game. And when I started playing Skyrim, I was reading all this lore right at the beginning. You like find all these books, and I was just reading through them, and it mentioned about Oblivion, and sort of it like related the two stories together, and that sort of helped me kind of get a little bit more interested in it. Um, so yeah, so I'm hoping I'll enjoy that, and I'm hoping it'll be like another Mass Effect thing. I spent years just hating on this game, telling people how bad it is, and then I'll become like a big super fan afterwards. So we'll see what happens.
Nice. Yeah, with Skyrim, I spent so many hours in that world when it came out, and I'm not typically a big fan of. I do like Lord of the Rings, but the whole like Middle Earth kind of stuff, that whole
Mm,
genre, sort of turns me off. But with Skyrim, I jumped
yeah.
in and loved it, and spent so much time, and almost to the point
Mm,
where I did everything in that game where I'm just so kind of burned from it, where I haven't touched it since in the
yeah.
like 6
Yeah.
years, five. I mean, it's been longer than since that thing launched,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't touched it again.
Yeah.
But you mentioned how buggy these
Yeah.
games are. They are, and that's a testament to that engine they use, and they kind of Bethesda, and rightfully so, they get shit every time because they tweak it, they improve it, say with like Fallout 4, Fallout 76, but it's this engine that really needs to just kind of be completely overhauled. Do you have any hope that
Yeah.
going forward with like Starfield, they're just going to, because they have said that like, oh, they were actually revitalizing and completely turning the
Yeah.
engine into something else, but then it still has issues. Do you have hope that they're going to like completely overhaul this thing?
Yeah, I think so. I think the reason that the engine, or that they're so infamous for their engine, is mostly because they, like you said, they haven't tried to come away from it. I think nowadays they'll be able to, hire some really talented guys to engineer something for them. It's not like they'll be using the same people who created this awful engine that they're still using. So yeah, I have every faith that if they need to create a new engine, they'll find someone with the know-how to do that. And now they're working with Xbox. I'm sure that will just help that as well. So yeah, I think Starfield. I think that my only thing with Starfield in particular is they've announced it as if people should care about it, but they announced it so early that no one actually knows anything about it. That now it's kind of like an old name.
Right.
So I think that any hype for me personally for Starfield's died down. Even if I see it, I don't really know what there could be that is going to revitalize that. But any future Fallout games, Elder Scrolls games will look great in a new engine, and so yeah, I'm really sort of looking forward to seeing what comes out of there.
Yeah, same here. I'm really hoping that Xbox kind of forces them to maybe take their time or delay. Xbox is no Microsoft. They're not afraid to delay even their huge flagship with the series coming out. They delayed Infinite. Halo Infinite, and so
Mm,
that was an easy decision to make. So I think that kind of
no.
control a little bit will force Bethesda to, if the next Fallout's not ready, push it. The next Starfield is not ready, to push it further. So I'm hoping that
Yeah.
or they have enough QA testers they can also throw at them to just like help with that whole process.
Yeah, I mean, it gives them sort of Bethesda room to take risks and have some financial backing to fall back on if need be. I mean, I know that ZeniMax had lots of money anyway, but
Right.
I think everyone would agree that Bethesda were kind of on a very, very steep decline, basically into a complete dead end. There didn't really seem to be any way out of this decline they were on. Um, so I think, like we said last week, it's brilliant that they've been acquired by someone like Xbox with such brilliant capital and such a great foothold in this industry. And I think the main positive to take from that is that Bethesda will be well looked after, and they'll have to reach a certain level of quality now being an Xbox game studio.
Yeah, exactly. Well, since we're talking about Bethesda, this week I got to play Doom Eternal, which I played before, but played it on a 120 frame monitor or a TV that I didn't realize had that
Oh yeah,
ability.
you mentioned, yeah.
And man, it's
Yeah.
dope. That for sure is the future. It looks just buttery smooth, and
Yeah.
oh, man, it's just so beautiful, where I just don't want to go back to
Yeah.
any other game. So I've been testing out all the different ones on my PC. Control has been the most issue, just like
Yeah.
getting it to work all the way. Although it has the whole ray tracing thing, and so with ray tracing all the way
Mm.
up, getting the frames to be any faster, at least for my rig,
Yeah.
is super taxing. But which
Mm.
also, it's another topic, but that makes me a little worried about going forward with next gen. Every console is claiming, at least with the Series X, with the PS5, they're claiming 60 frames per second. Ray tracing is on, but ray tracing is still so demanding on hardware. I wonder if we're going to actually
Mhm.
see some stuff like drawn back to 30 frames per second to see the ray tracing, or some kind of stuff behind the scenes helping it out, because it's still no joke. Like I've seen Digital Foundry did a great
Yeah.
breakdown of the whole 30 card series, the RTX 30 series, and they showed I want to say it was Metro Exodus playing, and it still has a hard time hitting everything with ray tracing fully turned up. It runs great, but it's still, like, you can tell it's really taxing on it. And with these new
Yeah.
consoles, do they have that level of that
Hmm.
graphical ability with their cards, or is it
Yeah.
something else? So I'm just kind of wondering if we're going to
Mhm.
get some kind of some shock a little bit. We've had that PR promotion recently with RTX and games running at 60 frames per second for next gen, but I wonder if the reality will be a little bit scaled down.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see because the only sort of the majority of the ray tracing we're exposed to is through RTX, um, which is obviously Nvidia's ray tracing technology. Whereas I think both consoles are using the AMD RDNA2 or whatever
Mm,
architecture it is. So it'll be in the AMD's ray tracing technology. Plus, it's important to remember that these consoles are single purpose sort of machines that are
it's
engineered for
true.
one purpose only. Um, so I think perhaps we may see some performance modes or some optional ways to play on certain games just to make sure that we can still play high frame rates, still have access to ray tracing, but it might be maybe 30, 40 FPS or maybe 60 on lower res. Um, but I think that the main problem is that a lot of the time where we're talking about, oh, the PS5 can only do 60 FPS or the Xbox Series X can only do 60 FPS or whatever, that's always using 4K as that uh, sort of comparison. Every time it's like you see an article of a headline like Assassin's Creed Valhalla only running at 30 FPS on Xbox Series X or whatever, or PS5 or whatever, and then you click on it and it's at 4K. No one's talking about 1080p, 1440p. I mean, 1080p by far is what everyone will be playing on, or most people will be playing on, because people still have 1080p TVs. They still have 1080p monitors, especially in the monitor space. So I just don't think we need to worry too much because all of these benchmarks are at very high resolutions. And I think at 1080p or 1440p, I'm sure we'll be able to get ray tracing and decent frames together. So, but again, it's all hypothetical, and we'll have to wait and see and sort of see what happens there.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's why I like to throw this stuff at you because, yeah, it's a race and it's a kind of a sticker word to use 4K or even I think when these consoles originally were being advertised, at least on the Xbox's end, they're saying like, oh, we can actually achieve 8K. It's like settle down, let's hold on and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
get there slowly because 8K is nuts, 4K is still like you
yeah,
mentioned super taxing, and 1080 is the
yeah,
majority of people are going to be playing, and 1080 gets you ray tracing turned on, it gets you higher frame rate. So let's kind of slowly get it out of the gate, but everyone's in such a race to, I think they just want to have that logo on the box 4K 8K
yeah,
when in reality it's just not, it's hard to pull off, and a lot of people don't even
yeah,
have that ability to play that on their TVs, on their
yeah,
monitors. So it's kind of and in
yeah.
the PC world it's not something everyone really, that's not the benchmark really. It's 1080 right now because it's still the hardware can't
No,
handle going to
exactly. Yeah,
4K. But that does remind me
yeah,
there's a lot
yeah.
of
And
great
I mean,
tech. Oh, go ahead.
no, carry on.
There's a lot of great tech
I
on
was going to say,
on.
most. I think there's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, I
You go,
think
you
so.
go, you go, you go.
Okay. So it was just a little bit about there's great tech on upscaling, on taking frame rate or not frame rates, taking rendering from 1080 to 4K and making it look like it is there. And so I think they can just do
Mhm,
that for the time being, just make it look technically 4K, but really it's we're running on there's a word for that tech. Digital Foundry always goes into detail on it, but that tech is really great right now. We're
yeah.
just kind of upscaling it. So just keep doing that until it's like
Mm.
full blown 4K. But what were you saying?
I was just going to say, if because 4K TVs are obviously very popular now. Not again, it's important to sort of look at 4K TVs and then monitors as well, because some people play on monitors, some people play on TVs, and I think the people who play on monitors, I think 1080p, 60 hertz, maybe 120 hertz is more the norm now, but 1080p is definitely the norm with monitors, and TVs 4K might be creeping up, but most of these 4K TVs are 60 hertz. You saying you had your 120 hertz TV, but they're not very popular. They're not really very heard. They're not really heard of or talked about because
Mm-hmm.
most of the time TVs are obviously used for gaming more and more, but they're more for watching films or watching television. So the 60 hertz is normally perfect for that. So you're not going to be able to see above 60 FPS at 4K anyway if you do happen to have a 4K TV. Um, And even if you do have a 4K TV or a 4K monitor that can do 144 hertz, um, I can't even think of a PC that costs under £2,000 that can run games at 4K, really high, still really great settings, at over 60 FPS or maybe over 80 FPS anyway. It's just not like we're saying. It's not that's not what we're aiming for. It's just misconstrued in social media with all the stupid discussions and all the reply threads and all the people trying to get clicks on their articles. It's not, I've spent probably over £1,000 on my PC in total, with all the parts in it. And I was playing Assassin's Creed Origins at 1440p, and even with some things slightly under ultra, I still struggled to get 80 90 FPS at 1440p, and that's an older game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just don't. I just think the conversation's very much dictated by people who just are in love with numbers. It's the same thing with teraflops. I mean, if it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't even know what teraflops were, because they're just
Right.
so. It's just not a thing you can compare. It's not a thing you can just judge something's power on. There's so many more things to it that I don't understand, but I at least know that it is more complicated than it seems. And so yeah, I just starting to get bored of all the articles talking about how many frames this is going to run at, because it's just dependent on the game. And yeah, it's just a sort of a moot point in a lot of respects. Sort of these conversations, they all end up being dead ends.
Yeah, it's buzzwords, especially when they're trying to sell these consoles. We're going to get a lot of these buzzwords, and then the reality will set in. But yeah, it's an interesting topic.
Yeah,
It's just something that I think about as we go forward with
yeah,
all the different things they're
yeah,
throwing at us. It's like, okay, can we actually achieve that? And it almost
yeah,
shoots them in the foot when you can't achieve those buzzwords that are thrown around. So
yeah,
but they're trying to sell it at the
yeah.
same time and give people a reason to adopt to this new tech. So it's a whole thing,
Mm,
but it almost hurts the devs
yeah,
because it's like, hey, we can't do that, man. You keep saying that it's possible on this
yeah.
next
Oh yeah,
console, but
yeah, yeah,
that's the whole thing.
yeah,
Well, Cal, we can get into some of the news here. We got some news on Cyberpunk, so we're actually super close to Cyberpunk. And in light of that, we got some news on some just more crunch stuff and from coming out of CD Projekt Red. So this is Cyberpunk 2077 studio head responds to mandatory crunch reports. This is Jordan Alleman of IGN. CD Projekt Red head of studio Adam Badowski has responded to a Bloomberg report about mandatory crunch at the studio, saying the move was one of the hardest decisions I've had to make, but noting that Cyberpunk 2077's developers will be well compensated for every extra hour they put in. This follows a report yesterday which contained an email from Badowski sent to CD Projekt Red staff. The reported email says that the studio will be enacting mandatory 6-day work weeks in the run-up to Cyberpunk 2077's November release, after, quote, extending all other possible means of navigating the situation. CD Projekt Red had previously promised its employees that they wouldn't be forced to crunch on the game in an interview with Kotaku in 2019. Badowski issued a statement in response to Bloomberg's reporting on Twitter. These last 6 weeks are our final sprint on a project we spent much of our lives on, something we care about deeply. The majority of the team understands the push. Badowski's statement reads, how do you feel about this in the news? I mean, crunch is such a complicated topic, but it's kind of, we go over back and forth. It's especially with this game, and it's constant with other games where the last month is super crunch time. And it seems like they're not able to avoid that as well.
yeah. I think if there are people there that are having their lives sort of negatively affected uh, by it, and they don't have anything that they can do about it, then obviously that's not good. But I think making something like Cyberpunk, it is a huge part of people's lives, like you said. And I think if you're going to work in an industry where you're making these kinds of projects, I think there's so much passion. I mean, there's so much passion sort of that you have to even get in the door,
Mm-hmm.
especially at big companies like that. So I feel like if you're passionate and you want this to do well, I think that it's just something that is necessary, especially for like you're saying, the final sprint on a project. It's not sort of a strange thing across any other industry. I mean, it's the same with any industry that has big projects to work on. I mean, look at hospitality. I mean, I used to work as a manager at a hotel, and I used to do like 80-hour weeks, sometimes 7 days a week, and there's no big outcry on in the media about any of that or anything. And that's forced. That's not, you don't have a choice. Um, And so yeah, I don't know. Like you're saying, it's a really hard one because I can see both sides. I don't think it's right that anybody should be forced to do something against their will, that's outside of their contract or anything. But also, I think it's a very niche industry to work in, and I think that um, unless it's because of bad, production or bad time management or bad organization, I just think it's part and parcel of sometimes making these huge, pretty much quadruple A now games. And it says they're all going to be compensated for every extra hour they put in. Um, I've seen things saying, people are looking at this from a US labor laws perspective or a UK labor laws perspective, and Poland have their own labor laws, which are apparently very, very
Right.
generous. Because you've got to remember, CD Projekt Red are a Polish studio. So yeah, I mean, I don't really know what my actual opinion would be on it, because again, I can see both sides and I think both have fair points. I think it's just a very difficult one. But I do think that the games industry is not the only industry that has crunch like this, and I think sometimes to create something special in a timely manner to please your consumers, I think that is sometimes just necessary. And yeah, I think that the people crunching will be compensated very well. And yeah, it's just one of those things. I'd be interested to see if Cyberpunk receives as much hate as Last of Us 2 did from this, because Last of Us 2 was received a whole storm of negativity simply because of crunch. So it'd be interesting to see
Right.
if Cyberpunk will receive something of the same ilk, because you normally see Project Red mentioned in conversations about studios that don't crunch, or that aren't predatory. They don't release DLC or they don't have microtransactions or anything. So it'd be really interesting to see how people sort of respond to this.
Yeah, you're right, and there's so many different directions to go in. In reference to Naughty Dog, yeah, they had it was kind of an expose talking about how there was a lot of a crunch culture there, and I think that was part of that negative backlash when that was kind of exposed. You're right, with CD Projekt Red, they've claimed, at least in 2019, there was that reference that they're trying to avoid crunch altogether with this game, and the reality is they couldn't avoid it. I wonder, so there's a couple of things to break down. There's this great tweet, and I wish I could pull it up in time to actually reference it, but they were talking about how in Poland they have these labor laws that are actually in favor of employees, but because they also have these contracting regulations where you can kind of hire someone as a contractor and not an employee, and so you're kind of you can void all that and have these different setups for a contractor. And a lot of times they'll do that for even if you're an employee, they'll hire as your contractor, and you don't have that those same restrictions on the amount of hours you work. There's that aspect of it, and also the 10% that the employees are probably going to get 10% of the back end as some kind of compensation or extra compensation, but that might only apply to 2020, and the game obviously is on the edge of 2020 releasing into 2021, so they might not receive a lot of that, is what they're claiming. Part of that 10% extra is also if you commit to the team, if you actually see it through release. So if you were to quit because of the crunch, you don't get that. Also, your name isn't in the credits. You're not able to use that on your resume that you were working for CD Projekt Red, even though apparently if it was for so long, if you quit before that game actually releases, they kind of remove you and don't let you use it as a reference anymore. So it gets a bit more complicated. At the same time, it's like, obviously at the face of it, crunch is bad, right? Across the board, nobody likes crunch and nobody approves of it. But it's this gray topic where this stuff is super complicated to make, and it takes so much time, and you can say, okay, just delay the game, but that just means the crunch extends. So they just have 2 more months of crunch, and so that doesn't end either. You can try and throw more people at it, but that doesn't seem to solve the problem either. This game has a huge budget, so it's not a money issue. So it's almost just like you can't say it's just part of the deal of the gaming industry, but at the same time, they just haven't had an answer for it. And I don't know what that answer would be, because you have passionate people that, even if you have across the board people that will take the time off, you have other people who it's like, well, I'm putting my soul into this game. I want to put as much time as I can. So it's this weird, thing that's it's two different, four different topics at the same time, four different feelings at the same time, and there's no answer for it. I wish we could eliminate crunch at the same time. I don't know how you do that, and it's something that it should still be brought up. It should still be there should still be attention to it. It should still be a negative thing, I guess, when we talk about it. At the same time, no industry or no developer has been able to avoid it, at least on this scale. And I think it becomes really
Yeah,
common when it's this triple A, quadruple A level. It's insanely hard to avoid crunch altogether.
yeah, yeah. And I think sort of going back to that tweet, that was sort of dissecting the Polish labor laws and everything. I think if you were to focus yourself on any law system or any rules or tribulations in any country, I think you'd be able to find tons and tons of loopholes like the ones that were mentioned in that tweet. But I just don't. That's kind of putting a negative skew on. I mean, I'm not saying it's not negative in the first place, but it's putting a further negative skew on to something that's kind of hypothetical, because that's somebody looking at the labor laws and saying, well, they could do this, they could hire people like this, and they could not give people money by doing this or by using this loophole or whatever. But that's not something CD Projekt Red have been shown to be doing, or to they haven't said they're going to do that. There's no evidence they are doing that. So I think I think sometimes people are just trying to, instead of digging into something and saying, well, maybe this or this, they're sort of trying to find the negatives and trying to make it. And the problem is, especially with social media, is people will see that, they'll see that tweet and they'll then say, "Oh, CD Projekt Red are doing this. They're doing all this." And I think whilst it is interesting to know that about all of that, and it does definitely give you some more insight into what people might do and what it could obviously happen in this situation, I just don't think it's worth that person in particular, or anything sort of just diving into that, because it just paints them in a bad light when it's all hypothetical at that stage.
Very true. Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying that that's what they're doing.
No, no,
It's
no.
just more of that is possible. And you're right.
Yeah,
It's super important to not get it twisted, and make that the reality. I guess we won't know until we're unless we're in deep into CD Project Red and
yeah,
within the team. I'm sure that information is super hard to actually come to light. But it just presents like, okay, when people
yeah,
do say, oh, they're going to be compensated and they actually have a control on their labor laws. It's like, okay, well, it's yeah,
mhm,
but it's also possible that they're not because of these issues.
yeah,
Yeah, it's super
sure.
complex, and I don't know how you get over it, how you change it. It's something that's deep within the industry. I mean, I was listening to this interview with is it John Carmack, the original developer on Doom, and he was
Mm,
talking about how they would spend just endless hours, and they kind of chose to do that. So there was this just deep ingrained, at least on this level, with these within the industry, where it's just you put your heart and soul into it, and it's both a negative and a positive, where it weeds out people that they want to also have a normal life, but they still care about this property, and you're caught in the middle. It's tough, man. It's I think it's fair that you can still enjoy the thing, and I guess that's how you. It comes down to a personal level. Can you enjoy the thing and still understand that there was this sacrifice being made? If anything, it makes me respect games more, because I realize that these are
mm,
toys that people spend their entire lives, sometimes wreck their lives, possibly working on. So it just makes me
mhm,
respect the the actual art when it comes out to it. I don't want that kind of sacrifice, that blood and sweat to have to go into these games, but I do
mhm,
respect the fact that they have put that into these games, and I try and keep
mhm.
that in the
Yeah,
back of my mind before I'm just like shitting on something. I mean, I will still shit on stuff for sure. We will always will, but at the
yeah,
same
yeah,
time, it's
yeah. Of
like
course, yeah,
these are made by people, and they have to. They're not seeing their family sometimes. They're not getting compensated fairly sometimes, and it's all for our enjoyment. So it's just this can of worms that I don't know if we'll ever avoid in the gaming industry.
yeah, yeah. And I don't mean to sort of use like whataboutism or anything, but again, all these people that, like your Jason Schreiers, or all these people at Kentucky who are so set on exposing crunch and 6-day work weeks, um, which again, that doesn't sound like, six-day work weeks for me, for someone who's worked in hotels and pubs and bars, that that's not out of the norm. People if people like Jason Schreier, I bet he goes to restaurants and bars, and that doesn't even cross his mind. And I'm not saying, because you can sort of choose one to sort of campaign about. I'm not saying that anything about that, but I just think that if you focus too hard on something in such a negative light, it sort of I just don't know. I would just like to see the same energy used against people who work in hospitality, because every single person I know who's worked in a bar or a pub have worked 7 days a week, and this is far worse than 9 to 5, 9 to 6 office hours. This is like 7:30 in the morning till midnight. Just 6 days a week. That's a completely normal thing in hotel work or pub work. So I just don't know why that doesn't get the same sort of energy. And I mean, game developers are paid far better than people who work in those industries as well. So
And
I
it's
just think
physical
there needs
labor
to,
too.
yeah, and I just think there needs to be a perspective on these kinds of things. And again, crunch, like you said, is not good. It can't be good. But I think when you look at the specific industry it's in, um, I just don't think it can necessarily be avoided as easily as just complaining about it and making YouTube videos about it, going, "Oh, crunch is really bad and the games industry is awful." And it's like, but it's not that easy. It's easy to just
Right.
cry about it and try and act like a hero by sticking up for all these poor employees who are probably getting paid lots and lots of money, when there's lots of other things that these people seem to not care so much about. But
No, yeah, I definitely don't disagree with you on that. I do want to see just more nuance when it comes to this topic, because it is such a just deep and complicated topic, and it's not just like it's good, it's bad. There's all this stuff going on, so I do want to see more of that. And you're right, where there's these high profile interviewers and journalists that kind of will pick a lane, and no matter what, like that's their perspective, but it's deeper. And yeah, I want to see more of that conversated, and also get some devs to just like be super honest about the process. And maybe, but it's almost like you don't get those stories until they're out of at least that almost the industry, because they don't want to get blacklisted and looked at negatively if they do talk about it. So it's like you have to wait years before you get the actual inside scoop. But yeah, I do want to understand more from the devs perspective in the future.
yeah, but I mean, I think you sort of put it well, with the single lane kind of mentality. It's like, and I don't mean to pick on him, but using Jason Schreier again, who wrote that expose on I think it was 2K or Gearbox, who did Borderlands 3, about something to do with profit sharing or something, and he had written this big thing, and loads of developers from Gearbox had come out. I think it was on Reddit or something, saying we didn't feel this way at all. It was explained much better than it was made out in the article. None of us or no one that they knew of felt that way. So this is what I mean. I mean, people like these writers or YouTubers are using their own emotions to speak on behalf of others. And sure, there's going to be people at these studios who are like, "Oh, I hate crunch. It's awful. It's affecting my life, and I can't quit because." And of course, that's awful. But I think there has to be both perspectives or both lanes sort of explored, because it's never that black and white. And
Right.
yeah, that's why I sort of don't like to try and form like a concrete opinion on it, because I'm just not smart enough to factor everything in and think about that.
Oh yeah, we're both just talking out of our asses, but we're just giving some
Oh yeah.
some perspective from two dummies. But yeah, no, it's super complex. I'm sure we'll be talking about this, in the upcoming months and years about crunch in general. But yeah, found that interesting, and I overall still cannot wait for Cyberpunk. I have my PC ready. I'll probably go there first for trying to play on whether it's console or PC. Probably go PC first, but yeah, cannot wait for that game. So stoked. Yeah. So yeah, we'll move on to our next one here, Callum. This is Xbox news, but I think it's just interesting to get some kind of comparison to what moves PS5 will do, what they have in response to this. So this is Xbox first-party games are not going to other consoles. So this is news editor Giuseppe Nelva of twinfinite.net. So this is an interview they had with Aaron Greenberg, who is the, let's see if I have that correct, the games marketing manager over at Xbox. So the interviewer asks, just a few days ago, a Microsoft representative was cited mentioning that there are no plans for more first-party games on other platforms. Is that correct? And Aaron Greenberg chimes in, yes, this is what we said because it's very specific. We more than doubled our studios over the past year, and as the new studios are transitioning, some of them had existing arrangements to publish games across multiple devices, that is, i.e. Deathloop, for one example. But going forward, these new studios will focus on making games for our platforms, and we have no plans to further expand our exclusive first-party games to other consoles. So this just brings to light more news about what we talked about last week, where will we still get, these PS5 versions of games that Bethesda owns? Will we get the next Starfield, next, Oblivion entry? But it looks like we're not officially. How do you feel about them actually holding on to these properties on the Xbox side?
Well, I don't know because I've heard different things from Bethesda. When Bethesda asked about it, they said, "Look, we're still, because Bethesda have a publishing department, and Bethesda said
Right.
that we're still making our own games and everything." It's more like yeah, and I think this is worded quite cleverly because he said we have no plans to further expand our exclusive first party games. So he's basically just saying our exclusive Xbox games, which is obviously right. Like if it's exclusive to Xbox, then it's not coming to another console. So if he had said we have no plans to further expand our first party games, then that would be a different story. But he said exclusive first, which is straight away the word that means it's not coming to other consoles. So whilst games like Fallout or Elder Scrolls or Starfield will inherently be a first party game because it's owned now by Xbox, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be an exclusive first party game, if that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I can't imagine the new Elder Scrolls or Starfield or any of that to be exclusive to Xbox. I just don't see that being financially viable for Bethesda or for Xbox. I just don't see that making any sense really, especially considering they're going to be coming to Game Pass.
Yeah.
They're going to want people to be spending full price on these games, and with the install base that the PS5 is going to have, they would be foolish not to. But I'm sure there's going to be tons and tons of Bethesda games that are going to be exclusive first party titles. I'm sure, and I think that's the thing. We don't need to people don't need to PlayStation fanboys or whatever don't need to be like, oh yeah, well, Elder Scrolls is still coming to PS5, because there could be a whole plethora of unannounced games from Bethesda Studios that are going to be Xbox exclusive, that we don't even know about yet. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think Elder Scrolls or Fallout or Starfield will be exclusive to Xbox. Personally, I could be completely wrong, and I don't think this statement disproves that, just because of him saying we have no plans to expand our exclusive first party games, because again, it's very cleverly worded, very PR, well trained in PR to make sure he's saying very, very exact things. But yeah, that's what I think, and I'm sure I'm probably wrong.
Well, I share the same similar ideas where financially, I don't think it makes sense for them to lock these games to the system because they want to try and make some of that money back, right? That 7.5 billion they spent. So some of that is getting other consoles to pay the full retail price while giving a cut back to their Xbox users and having it, free on Game Pass, first on Game Pass. So it's tough, but I wonder if maybe there will be some disagreement within Bethesda's publishing side, saying they actually want to put it on PS5. But I imagine they already nailed those deals beforehand before they made this arrangement. So I'm sure they've already talked about this. Does that mean that maybe the actual reality will be it'll be first on Game Pass, maybe on Xbox, timed exclusive for like a year, then we get these titles out, similar to how PlayStation has handled like PC ports with some of their games. I wonder what the details are. This quote does make me think that it does lean more towards, because Bethesda is their first party now, that they're saying like, hey, this is only going to be for us. Although they do word it well, where that gives them wiggle room, where they say we have no plans. But of course, that just means that nothing announced yet that in the future actually it is going to go to PS5. It's interesting. There's part of me that wants Xbox to make these moves, because if it was the other way around, I think PlayStation would hold on to these exclusives with a death grip. They'd hold on to Bethesda and not allow them to venture out, because that's what they've been doing, and that's why they're so successful holding on to these first parties and having a reason to buy a PS5. Part of me wants Xbox to make those moves just as a way to compete with PlayStation, to give them something to react as well, but also to just kind of strengthen that console race going forward. If it just goes everywhere, then there's just less of a reason to go to Xbox. Although you still have Game Pass, it's going to be a great deal. You're going to get these games there, if not first, you're going to get them within that Game Pass menu of games. So it's interesting, but I mean, time will tell. But you're right that it doesn't make the financial sense to actually limit these games to their console.
Yeah, and I think, again, just to sort of double down on his wording, because if he had said we have no plans to further expand our first party games to other consoles, then that would for sure make me think, oh, maybe they're not going to come to PS5. But the fact he put exclusive first is very, very specific. Like
Mm.
that's basically him saying any game that will be exclusive to Xbox will not come to PS5, and that's like literally like
It's just like
opposites,
a
isn't it?
loop.
It
Yeah.
just yeah, exactly. And so I think that word exclusive is very, very cleverly placed. But I think even if Elder Scrolls come to PS5 and Fallout comes to PS5, just the fact it's going to be on Game Pass is a huge advantage. Because I mean, now that these games are owned by Xbox and they're coming to Game Pass, I will not be getting them on PS5 because I can either pay £70 to get them on PS5 or I can get them for $6.99 a month through Game Pass as well as all the other games on there. So I don't think they have to be exclusive to Xbox to have an advantage. I think that advantage is now there forever because Game Pass is such an insane deal, and these games are going to benefit from that. So and that I'm sure there are lots and lots of people who have PCs and PS5 so that they can get both exclusives. And it's going to be the same for all those people. They're going to choose to get if a game's on Game Pass or PS5 and it came out that one day, they're going to get it on Game Pass every time because it's either £70 or $6.99 a month, unless
Right.
you're a really sad and pathetic trophy hunter like I am, and you want to get the platinum trophy. Then that might be a different story.
Yeah, you're gonna be missing out on those haptic, triggers and feedback. So it's like that's worth the price tag, I
yeah,
guess.
that's true. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, time will tell with this kind of thing because I think the reality is it's going to get a bit murky as we go forward, and it's like, hey, we're leaving all this money on the table. I think that's the reality of it, but we will see. I found that interesting in the news
Yeah.
recently. So Callum, as well as another interesting thing, we finally get some PS5, PS4 comparison for Spider-Man Remastered. So there's this footage, and I gave you a link there. I was going to kind of scrub through it. If you want to let me know if you have it ready to play, then we can watch it in real time with the power of the internet. So I'm going to hit play right now and switch over to it. So yeah, it's interesting to get actual comparison footage of this remaster working in play. And so the big takeaway is the whole 60 frame per second, which is at first we're starting off with PS4 gameplay. And one thing I took away from watching this last night was it still looks amazing on PS4. Damn, this game looks awesome.
Yeah.
But on PS5, of course, with that frame rate, it looks just buttery smooth.
Yeah, I think I haven't watched this yet, but I saw some of the screenshots, and I think obviously it looks great, and they've done a huge amount of work to it. But I don't know if you saw the new character model for Peter Parker is just.
What are your thoughts on that?
I just have no idea why they did that. I have no clue why that has happened because I mean, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, but my favorite thing about my favorite Spider-Man stories always come from when Peter Parker's a little bit older. And in the setting of the PS4 game, he's 8 years into being Spider-Man,
something like that.
Yeah, so he must be like in his mid-20s.
Right.
And the new model, and before I even say anything, the original model was perfect. The Peter Parker from the game was one of my favorite things about the game, when he's not in the suit. But just because they'd finally had like a mature Peter who's sort of, he knows what he's doing, and yeah, this one just looks like an 18-year-old kid again, or however old. And it just isn't going to make any sense. This guy's going to show up to teach Miles Morales. He looks like younger than him. He's meant to be doing it for 8 years. Like, what was he, 10 when he first started being Spider? It's just, and it's just the fact that it was already established, like it's already there. And if this is the reason that, yeah, there it is. And if this is the reason that they're now charging you because they've done this much extra work, then I just wish they had just not bothered. Because yeah, it's just a bizarre choice for me, and yeah, I'm not sure why it's happened.
Yeah, because he does look younger. I think that was the main focus. So their original announcement was that they needed to find a better actual model to use that CG reference with the voice actor, so one that matched his face more accurately. But they went consciously with like a younger model of Peter Parker. So yeah, it's all the same things you hit. Where he's supposed to be older, so they nailed it with that first model, but then he's now at least like 5 years. He looks younger in this one.
Yeah.
It's a bit strange. I guess at the when it's all said and done, I don't care at that much. It's like, okay, I guess I'll just get used to this guy, and it's fine. It's been a while since I played it, so maybe I could try and scrub it from my memory. It's just such a kind of strange decision to change it for in any way. Like they should just kept the ball rolling, but apparently they needed to make those adjustments, but I just don't see if it was really needed.
And I mean, it's kind of like recasting a character in the second series of like a series you love, because I love the story in Spider-Man. It was one of the
Yeah.
real highlights of the game, and I didn't think it was going to be, and especially the ending, which I won't spoil, just in case. But it was so, it was really like just well done and really like emotional and really sort of just a really great sort of well executed. So to now play Miles Morales or even play through it again to see that same really personal scene but with a different person, it's just, I don't know. I kind of feel obliged to play it again now, which I don't want to do, but I now feel like I have to because I now need to have this canonical Peter Parker before I jump into Miles Morales.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a really bizarre choice. I have no idea, why they felt they had to do that. And yeah, yeah, I'm really, I'm personally not pleased with it.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think it's
But yeah.
going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And myself, it's not a deal breaker for me, but it's just more like, hey,
Mhm.
why did you do this? But they have
Yeah,
their,
yeah,
at least
exactly. Yeah.
on paper, they have their reason why. But aside from the weird change in the model for Peter Parker, just seeing these two in comparison, are you more interested in playing this on PS5? Seeing the new, it seems like they're showing the ray tracing tech with the reflections, which look nuts. Although
Mhm.
that could be so. Kudos to
Yeah.
Insomniac; they did a really great job with reflections already in the game. So I don't know if that this
Yeah.
is full blown ray tracing. They're just tweaking it, but this game does have official ray tracing support. So apparently that's happening for sure.
Mhm.
But it just seemed like in the actual gameplay, I wasn't seeing that yet. But we'll actually have to
Mhm.
and wait for Digital Foundry to like fully test it out. But I mean, it looks nuts,
Yeah.
and I'm surprised that I was okay with it at 30. That's the thing. It's like I was cool with it at 30 frames per second. At 60, it just looks even better. But I think I can.
Mhm.
There's games where I can go either way. But I'm not going to be mad at this 60 frame per second mode. It just
Yeah.
looks even more awesome. You see all the animations in his body when he's swinging around. They're just way more
Mhm.
fluid. And yeah, I cannot wait to pick this up.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the thing as well with frame rates is you don't notice unless it's really choppy and and it's like constantly changing. So if it's going from like 30 to 20 to 30 to 20 constantly, that's when you really notice it. But if it's a steady frame rate of at least 30, you won't realize because unless you've literally just been playing a game at 140 FPS or something ridiculous and then you've gone straight to something like that, you might. Or if they're running side by side, you definitely will. But you won't realize if it's a good steady frame rate, then it'll be fine. It's like Persona 5 Royal is one of the most fluid looking games I've ever played, especially with how the HUD moves and everything. And that runs at 30 FPS. I mean, I don't even have a PS4 Pro. And I remember at the time I was playing Halo Reach at 140 FPS at a higher res as well on my PC. And obviously at the time I was like, oh, this is super smooth. But then I'd go and play Persona 5 Royal on my PS4 and I wouldn't even notice the difference. I know they're very different games, but I just think people just concentrate too much on this thing. Whilst a higher frame rate is of course better, um, people don't need to be so like, oh, you're playing that at 30 frames a second. How can you do that?
Right.
Kind of thing. Because like you said, Spider-Man is awesome. It still is awesome on PS4, and I'm sure Miles Morales will look awesome on PS4. And but it's nice to see this become the norm for people who just have consoles or anything. It's going to be really cool. But in response to your question about whether or not I'm more likely to get it now, in a weird way, despite hating the new character model, that's made me want to play it more than I did because I feel obliged to now experience this new Peter Parker.
Mm.
Um, so it's kind of a weird catch-22 there, but I don't think I will play it just because it's as much as I love it. I think the gameplay loop itself is it gets very samey. It's nothing, you know, um, groundbreaking. And whilst I didn't mind it the first time, we got a nice shot of Doc's crotch there. And what,
In 4K.
whilst I'm yeah, whilst I enjoyed it at the time, I just don't think that's something I'd want to do again. So yeah, I probably won't do it. But yeah, that Peter Parker thing's gonna really annoy me.
Yeah, it's interesting, and they made that move, and we'll
Yeah,
see how it goes. But yeah, it's actually
yeah,
coming out pretty soon.
yeah,
We'll actually hopefully get to get in our hands and try it out. Now this game, Callum, this next
yeah.
one drops today, technically tomorrow. This is Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time. So I pulled some of the Metacritic up, and it's actually getting great reviews. I was sort of nervous about this because none of the reviews, the embargo didn't lift until today. So I just found it interesting. Usually when it gets down to the wire, that often means it's not looking too good, but the reviews have been super positive. So Destructoid gives it a 9, PlayStation Lifestyle gives it a 9, Games Radar Plus gives it a 4.5 out of 5, Game Informer gives it an 8.5, IGN gives it an 8, and then at the bottom end, VG247 gives it a 3 out of 5. Is this on your radar? Do you think you're going to be picking this up?
It is. I would love to play it, but I would have to play the Insane Trilogy all the way through first, just because of my weird thing where I
Why?
have to just play. I don't know. I really don't know, and it's even weirder with Crash. Like I just feel like I'd be a faker if I was to play Crash 4.
No one
I
cares, man.
have
Just
played
play
the
the 4.
original 3, but no, but I do.
Okay.
um, yeah, no, I'll probably end up playing it. Just not right now. I mean, I've got a huge backlog which I'm
Yeah, for
adding
sure.
onto for no reason. Um, so yeah, it looks awesome. I mean, it looks so good. Looks lovely. I love platforming games like that. I don't think there's enough of them. Um, so yeah, we'll have to see if it can knock Knack off of the top spot, but we'll find
That's the
out.
top spot, man. Yeah, it's tough. They have
Yeah,
their work ahead of them.
yeah,
Yeah, I was a bit frustrated with the Insane Trilogy just because they kind of they kept the same like type of gameplay where it's pretty brutally hard at points, and I both love it and also was frustrated. But so I'm interested to see what they change as far as in the gameplay. Do they make it a bit more accessible? I imagine they still have the
yeah,
super hard areas. Do they maybe push it to the outer rim? That's kind of the beauty of some of the newer Super Mario games, that they would have the harder levels outside of the actual like gameplay, so you could still complete it if you wanted to without
yeah,
touching those levels,
yeah.
and you could choose to jump in. I wonder if they'll do something like that or it's baked in. But this game looks beautiful too, so I can't wait to play for that
Mhm.
side of it as well. And yeah, I have no
Yeah,
problem just jumping into this one. I did dip into the Insane Trilogy, didn't finish any of them, but played for a couple
mhm.
hours on each. And yeah, no, I'm glad it's getting good reviews, and it looks like it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think actually, I think it's supposed to be harder than the Insane Trilogy. I
Great.
was looking at Power Picks, who does all the trophy guides and everything. And well, I say he, I think it's a group of people. But yeah, they were saying that it's yeah, apparently the very last levels are extremely hard, especially to do all the time trials and relics
Ah,
and that. So yeah, but it does sound like there's a modern or retro play style. So I don't know what that means. I
huh.
don't know if it's anything to do with like the D-pad, because I know some people like to play with the D-pad or anything like that. Um, so yeah, I think actually I might give that a down. I might download the Insane Trilogy tonight actually, and just blast through. I'm not worry about all the collectibles and stuff, and just get through them, and then I might pick this up because it does it really great. I was just on the Power Picks thing, and they had like a video or a trailer or something pop
Nice.
up, and it does look pretty nice.
It's also something to say for Activision actually taking the charge and allowing these remasters for a lot of their classic games. I mean, they own the Tony Hawk's Pro
Mm,
Skater franchise, and we have that beautiful remaster recently. And there,
mhm.
we had Spyro, we had the Insane Trilogy, and so this is a new entry. But I love that they're dipping into these properties, and it's stuff like Konami. I wish they would get off their ass and allow somebody, if not them, allow somebody else to tackle all these properties they're sitting on. And you're seeing Capcom do the same
Yeah,
thing. So I just want to. I'm hoping this is taking note, or other devs are taking note, other publishers, studios are going, hey, we have all this stuff that we're sitting on, let's put in some time and give the people what they want. So I'm really hoping we see
yeah,
more of this going forward.
yeah, definitely. I love remakes and older series sort of having sequels or reboots or anything. So yeah, I'm all for that as well.
Nice. Yeah, so that came out today, or comes out very soon, next couple hours. But yeah, I can't wait to try that. I think that is the full retail price, right? I'm assuming so. I haven't looked into that. That might
What's that? Where,
sway.
where? How much is it?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's the full retail price or if it's any cheaper, because that might
Oh, I
sway
see what
what
you
I
mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how I feel. If it's maybe a bit of a discount, I'm
Yeah,
more
that's a good
inclined to
point,
jump in.
actually. I don't like spending money. All it is, it's full retail. 59.99 over here.
It's a little tough, but it's still, it looks really good. It's just that
It
it's
does.
slightly,
I'm sure it's worth the money.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but yeah, 59.99 is 59.99, isn't it? It's a lot of money. So yeah.
It's something I think I wouldn't mind waiting on, until there's a deal or
Mm.
something, but still looks awesome.
Yeah.
Cal, we got our
Yeah.
next one, more Xbox news, but this is just once again to get some comparison to PlayStation 5. And this is
Yep.
actually with features that maybe we'll see unannounced features yet. I want to kind of dig into that. So this is Xbox Series X backwards compatibility. Most Xbox One X games run at 60 frames per second in 4K. This is Bo Moore of IGN. Digital Foundry has put the new Xbox Series X to the test, seeing how it runs current gen games as compared to the Xbox One X. While the Xbox One X often struggled to output games at more than 30 frames per second, the Series X was capable of a smooth 60 frames per second, or whatever the game's frame rate cap is, in almost all the games tested. Keep in mind, these games haven't received any special optimizations for the new console yet either. This frame rate upgrade is being handled by Xbox's smart delivery system with no new update from developers. Also, the ability to swap between titles on the hard drive was tested, and the Series X holding is able to hold 6 saved game states at a time, allowing you to swap between them and taking about 5 to 8 seconds to swap between each one and continue playing. Game states even persist after you power the console down. So these two features, the quick swap between games, and then also the way it's natively upgrading the frame rate on games. I don't know if PS5 has an answer to those yet. So at least with the quick resume, we'll go into that one first. We have that on PS4 where you can jump right back into your save state exactly where you were. But I haven't seen, I've been combing through the internet, I haven't seen them announce the ability to swap between different titles like Xbox is
Yeah.
testing now. I wonder if they have a response to that. Do you think that's something they can pull off?
Yeah, I think if anything, I think that's something the PlayStation 5 is going to be superior in. I mean, mostly because in early days when they were talking about what was it they were saying? They were saying that you'll be able to, there's going to be no loading screens, no menus or anything. I think that all ties in with things like switching from game to game. It's all about loading up a different state and things like that. And I think PS5 SSD architecture is a lot quicker than the architecture that's in the Xbox,
Mm.
just in terms of gigabytes a second. So I imagine that if anything, it'll be just as good on PS5. Um, but I can't say the same for the smart delivery. I think Xbox have definitely taken that route, and I don't think PlayStation 5 has. So I don't think we'll see. I think we'll just see pro games running how they run on the Pro on the PS5 personally. But I'd like to be proven wrong on that.
Yeah, there's one aspect of this. So we had the PS4, then the PS4 Pro, and I own the PS4 Pro. There is a mode that lets you unlock hardware or unlock software abilities on the standard PS4 models where they will take advantage somewhat of the extra whatever it's RAM or graphical ability. But I don't see how that transfers over. But they have that
Mm,
mode you can turn on and off on the PS4 Pro rather.
mm,
But
mm.
is there any of that going on when we switch to PS5? Like it seems like if they had that ability, they'd be also advertising that as well, where these
Yeah,
games will natively run better. It seems like they don't have that installed yet, or part of the architecture as of
yeah.
yet. And I wonder if I keep going back to Xbox's the way they've integrated with PC the past couple of years, how it's a lot of their games are available on PC. They make sure that they're available there as well, where you have that PC architecture of supporting all these different graphics cards and
Mhm.
frame rate abilities. And so because of that, maybe they're able to take advantage of their games now where they just natively talk to the new hardware. So whatever the Xbox, the next Series Z or 5, whatever comes out, it's just going to talk to that hardware just like because they've put in the groundwork and made it
Yeah.
more PC friendly. And on the PlayStation side, they haven't done that at all. It's just their own architecture. So yeah, I wonder if because it seems like they're going to have to go and tailor make each PS4 game to work better on PS5.
Yeah, yeah. I think again, I don't. I think, like you said, I think Xbox have a certain route that allows them to do this, quite easily. Not to mention, Microsoft's history with software being creative Windows. I'm sure making sure software is compatible across different versions is a thing that they, have to think about all the time. Um, so I think that unless PlayStation are just holding some cards close to their chest, they have barely talked about the UI or anything so
True.
far. It could be just a real last, blow up of of good news. But yeah, I just don't know. I just can't imagine it happening. I would have thought they would have said about it already. Um, so yeah, I mean, but I mean, I think I've mentioned this before. I don't have a PS4 Pro, so playing a PS4 game on a PS5 is going to instantly be a better version for me anyway.
That's true.
Um, and also, I'm not inherently expecting previous gen games to blow me away on the PS5. I'm expecting PS5 games to do that. So I don't mind if they don't run that well at 4K or whatever. I'm not too worried. I mean, obviously, it'd be nice if they did, but I'm mostly buying my PS5 to play PS5 games and just continue what I was already doing on my PS4. So the fact I can do that is enough for me. But it is a shame that unless they reveal something, it's a shame that they don't have this same seamless sort of delivery thing that Xbox have.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that was PlayStation's mantra for a while going with the PS5 is that they're not concerned with the ability to play these older games. It's their
Mhm.
focus is PS5 games and unlocking the hardware. Where the folds are introduced is where they have a lot of games, at least in this window, that are going to have PS4, PS5 versions, whether it's Miles, it's a Horizon, that's still not within the window, but they're going to have PS4 support. So then they kind of changed their mantra and allowed for these different models to be introduced at the same time. So although that makes you think that and it must be because it's only those specific games because they intended on a PS4 version. They're going to have that ability to just swap over, and you have
Mhm.
just a different level when you're on PS5. But
Mhm.
those older games, there's no intention on upgrading. But at the same, I'm in the same boat where it's like that doesn't really turn me off. I want PS5 level games when I see oh god, what's that? Demon Souls. When I see Demon Souls running,
Yeah.
it's like I want that. I want that level of graphical and
Yeah.
performance level. I want that going forward. So that's what I'm interested
Mhm.
in. But I was going to touch on the ability to the quick swap or the multi quick swapping that Xbox has. I wonder if PlayStation's just going to go a different route with it. So I found this quote from Mark Cerny. This is in one of the first Wired.com interview articles they did talking about the PS5. So he says, quote, even though it will be fairly fast to boot games, we don't want the player to have to boot the game. See what's up, boot the game, see what's up. Cerny says a multiplayer game service will provide the console with a set of joinable activities in real time. Single player games will provide information like what missions you could do and what rewards you might receive for completing them, all of those choices within the visible UI. So I wonder if they're going to have, and we have yet to see the UI. I think that's going to be for sure October. But I wonder if their answer is you don't need to jump into the game, even though it's fast on Xbox. You don't need to jump into the game to see whatever's going on, to see where your progress is, to see what you have yet to unlock. I wonder if their answer is just within the UI showing you games almost running to see like what you
Mhm.
have available and then jumping in.
Mhm.
That's not the same as being able to quickly swap between games like Xbox
No.
can, at least at the moment.
Yeah.
But at least it seems like they're taking another route where you have all the information in your UI about each game and makes you not have to jump into a game versus but yeah, it's still not an answer to if I want to swap between games quickly. It doesn't seem like they have an answer for that yet, but they have a way to
Yeah.
provide all the info immediately for each game without booting it up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because you have, a lot of people, who are, big fans of the Xbox Series X who say that, having the choice of a disk drive is really important to them and all the rest of it. But if swapping between games so seamlessly is such an important thing for players, then why would you want to have disc games? Because you can't
It's
do
true.
that with disc games because you have to get up, put the disc in, or take the other one out or whatever. So, um, yeah. So I don't know. It's one of those things. It would be nice, but I just don't think it's. I'd much rather be able to turn on my PS5 or my Xbox, get into a game straight away, and then if I want to play another game, even on PS4 now, sometimes it takes a while to boot a game up, but the the holding down the PS button, closing the app, and then going on to another game is really seamless already. So as much as the quicker the better, obviously. I'm not sure this is something that I think it's something quite trivial that either PS5 will just do it, and I don't know if it's worth them even saying about it, or if they don't do it, it's not really going to be much of a thing for me. Even though I am a digital, all digital sort of gamer, I'm not too worried about that. But like I said, the faster the better, and it's cool that that is a feature. Um, Hopefully, I can have that on my PC. That'd be nice.
Yeah, one of the articles mentioned this is something that's not on on PC architecture yet.
Yeah, yeah.
You brought up a good point where I think this stuff is still in early reviewers' hands, where they get to talk about how they're testing out this quick swap ability. This is still, I imagine, tied to downloaded games. So unless, and I highly doubt that Xbox would do this, but unless you, even if you have the disc, you fully download the game content onto your console, which a lot of games do anyways now, but you still have to have that disc for security reasons to make sure you're not just like handing it out to a friend and having multiple copies of it. You still have to have that disc running on your system. Are they saying that even if you have the disc version of the game, you download that game and it lets you play it without having that disc in there? If not, that's a pretty crazy ability, but I just highly doubt that they would allow that. That lets them lock it down so multiple people aren't playing the same game. So that's still going to be dependent on people downloading the game and having it on their system and then being able to quick swap. And I think the reality is a lot of people still gravitate towards having a physical disc, buying it in stores. And so is this a feature that a lot of us, even though you can do it on paper, a lot of people are still not going to be able to do it because they're going to have the disc version of the game?
Yeah, and I think one of the main selling points of having discs still is the fact you can trade them in or sell them to minimize the cost of whatever other games you buy. But if Xbox allowed you to play the game without the disc, that would just nullify that. That would be the
Right.
whole DRM thing all over again, which Xbox have already tried, and it went down horribly.
Yep.
But yeah, it is. It's sort of. I think it's a point that's worth looking at because there's a lot of discussion about the digital marketplace being more expensive, discs being a lot more consumer friendly. Um, so it's difficult to then rave about this when if it's so consumer friendly and cost effective to have discs, you're not going to be able to use this feature of the console.
Right.
But I mean, that doesn't mean it's a bad feature. It doesn't mean there's no sort of negative point to take from that because it's like what I said to you. If I The reason I'm getting a digital PS5 isn't only because I probably won't end up using the disc drive, but it's because this console is meant to have a super fast SSD in it. I don't want anything to slow that down, and a disc would do that. So yeah, it's a weird one. Is the Series S or the Series S, the 1440p one, is that digital only,
It is. Yeah.
or is it okay? Yeah, so on consoles like that, I suppose it'd work really well. But yeah, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, I wonder, it's another topic as well, but as you brought that up, is the need to still have these disc versions of consoles, is that going to end up holding us back with these new features that can be possible, like quick swapping and other aspects like that? If you have it all downloaded on your system and no need for a disc, you can only have that ability by just having it all digital. So I wonder, as we go forward, what that will hold back as far as features go. But there's still, the thing is, they want to sell these consoles, and a lot of people still buy the disc versions of them. So they're kind of, we're held back, but by consumers, really, not by, or even just the internet infrastructure as a whole, we're held back by that, and not. And even though we could have these cool new things if we went all digital, but it's a whole can of worms. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think the features will still be there, regardless. I mean, it's like on PS4. I mean, back when I used to sort of have disc games and things when I first got the console. I mean, if I look on my library of games, there'll be some. And I'll be like, oh, I forgot I had that, and I'll go to download it, but it was the disc version I had, so I can't download it. So I think it does offer some inconvenience, but I think that's just discs in general. I think discs are just inconvenient in today's space for unless you have bad internet, then it's the opposite, the other way around. But I think these features will still be made and thought of and implemented just because it still improves the user interface, and the majority of people do still or do buy digital or from the PSN store. So I think it is starting to become a majority thing. But yeah, like you were saying, no matter what the majority becomes of how people play their games, disc will always be around until we have some sort of worldwide super fast internet. Because there's always somebody who can't download games or can't get online, so the discs need to be there for that.
We need to get Elon Musk working on this high speed for everyone worldwide.
Yeah.
Even if it means
Yeah.
unlocking the AI or the robots, I guess we'll take our chances.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I'll enlist in the war against robots.
Yeah. All right, man. Yeah, that's it for us this week. We can end it there. Where can they find you online?
Twitter at Bear Monroe is probably the best place.
Awesome. And you can keep up with the show as well on Twitter at Plastic Heart Pod. That's it for us this week. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
See you later.